So picture this, a targeted strike, a shocking assassination, and just like that, a region that was barely holding on to a ceasefire, it's now in a full-blown war. So the big question is, how did we get here? Let's break down the chain of events that lit this massive fuse. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the exact moment that ceasefire just completely fell apart. Then we'll rewind a bit and see what led up to the war. We're also going to dive deep into the strategic thinking that got us here. After that, we'll look at how this whole thing is spiraling out of control. And finally, we'll see how the Gulf states are getting caught right in the middle of it all. Okay, so let's jump right into the immediate trigger. You've got this really fragile piece, right? It's been holding since late 2024, and it's basically the only thing stopping a much bigger war from breaking out. And then, poof, in less than 72 hours, it's just gone. So, March 2nd, 2026. That's the date everything changed. That's when Hezbollah, who you know is allied with Iran, launches a volley of rockets from Lebanon right into northern Israel. And that one move, that's what officially rips up that U.S.-brokered ceasefire. It just opened up a brand new, incredibly dangerous front in this war that's already escalating way too fast. And when you look at the timeline, the speed of this whole thing is just breathtaking. Seriously. On February 28th, the U.S. and Israel kick off their campaign against Iran. The very next day, Iran confirms its supreme leader was killed in those strikes. And then, not even 24 hours later, the response comes. Hezbollah hits back. It's an unbelievably fast chain reaction. Okay, so when we're talking about this specific front, the Israel-Lebanon border, you've got two main players facing off. You've got Israel, of course, with its military, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And then you've got Hezbollah, a really powerful group, now led by Naim Qassem, since his predecessor was killed. But here's the thing, right? Hezbollah's attack didn't happen in a vacuum. It was a reaction. So that's not the real start of this story. The real question is, how on earth did we get to a point where the U.S. and Israel felt they had to launch a massive military campaign against Iran to begin with? Yeah, to answer that, we've got to go back. Let's look at the context, the stuff that was happening right before those first strikes hit on February 28th. You know, the stage for this was really set over the last couple of years. Since late 2023, Israel and Hezbollah have been in this constant, low-level fight. That ceasefire in November 2024, it was supposed to put a lid on it, but honestly, people were violating it almost every day. The peace was paper thin. So when that huge campaign against Iran kicked off, well, that was the spark that ignited the whole powder keg. And look, when I say massive, it's hard to even wrap your head around the scale. We're talking about nearly 900 strikes on Iranian targets in just the first 12 hours. Let that sink in. That's more than one strike every single minute, for 12 hours straight. This was not some limited, targeted thing. No, this was an all-out assault, pure shock and awe. And the goals they announced? They were incredibly ambitious. It was basically a three-step plan. First, they wanted to knock out Iran's air defenses so they couldn't fight back in the air. Second, destroy their missiles and naval forces so they couldn't retaliate from a distance. And third, and this is a big one, a so-called decapitation campaign. That meant targeting and killing over 40 of Iran's top leaders, including the supreme leader, to cause maximum chaos. So you have to ask, why? Why launch an attack this huge? Well, this brings us to a really fascinating analysis from Open Canada. They argue that this whole strategy was built on something they call the illusion of control. So what exactly is this illusion of control? Well, it's this idea that you can conduct these clean, surgical military strikes against a major country like Iran, you can even kill their top leader, and somehow you can control the outcome. It's like thinking you can light a forest fire, but then tell the flames exactly which trees to burn. And as we're about to see, it was an absolutely massive gamble. And this slide just lays it out perfectly, the difference between the assumption and the reality. The assumption was that because Iran had been kind of restrained in the past, they'd do the same thing again, a limited response. But the reality? Oh, it was the exact opposite. Iran unleashed a massive wave of retaliation, hitting not just Israel but U.S. bases all over the Middle East. The illusion of control? It didn't just crack, it completely shattered. And what's really chilling is that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, basically predicted this whole thing right before he was killed. He said, and I'm quoting here, "The Americans should know that if they start a war, this time it will be a regional war." It's pretty clear that warning wasn't taken seriously enough. So, let's talk about the consequences of that miscalculation. Because this conflict is no longer just about Iran, Israel, and the US. No, it's spreading, and it's spreading fast. I mean, just look at the map of Iran's retaliation. It tells you everything you need to know. It wasn't just about hitting Israel back. US forces were hit in Bahrain, in the UAE, in Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, all over the place. All of a sudden, this wasn't some contained fight. It was exactly what Khamenei warned it would be, a regional war. And all these other countries, who had nothing to do with the first strikes, were now right in the line of fire. And of course, the global economy felt it immediately. The price of oil just shot up to $82 a barrel, the highest it had been in 14 months. It's a perfect reminder of how fast trouble in the Persian Gulf can hit your wallet at the gas station, no matter where you live. Meanwhile, back in the US, the public was not on board. According to a Reuters/Ipsos poll, only about 27% of Americans actually approved of the strikes. That means you've got a huge majority, almost 3/4 of the country, who either disapprove or just aren't sure. And that makes it really tough to sustain a long-term war. And the fallout just keeps coming, one thing after another. We've had the first American casualties, 3 service members killed. The war's spreading even further, with a suspected drone strike hitting a UK base in Cyprus. Economically, ship traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has tanked by 70%. And if you're trying to travel, good luck. Major airlines like Emirates are canceling all flights out of Dubai. It's chaos. Okay, so finally, let's talk about the countries that are stuck right in the middle of this whole mess, the Gulf Arab states. For them, this isn't some distant conflict. It is happening on their doorstep, and it's forcing them to completely rethink their entire national security strategy, like right now. And here's their huge dilemma. For the last few years, countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE have actually been trying to cool things down with Iran. But here's the kicker. Even though they had nothing to do with those initial strikes, they still got hit by Iran's retaliation. They are, quite literally, caught in the crossfire. This quote from an Al Jazeera piece just nails their situation. For a long time, these Gulf states played this balancing act, strategic ambiguity, trying to be friends with both the US and Iran. But now, in the middle of a hot war, that approach doesn't look smart anymore. It just makes you look like a target. And all of this leaves us with one last, really sobering question. That illusion of control we talked about, it's gone. It's been totally shattered. The idea that this could be some kind of neat, tidy, limited war has been completely debunked. So now, with the entire region going up in flames, is there any way back from the brink?